Air work. Let's talk some air work here. Stall recovery is the first one on the list. Look, don't get a secondary stall. This is truly the main point of interest when recovering from a stall. Look, it used to be that the concern was placed on basically how much altitude was lost on the recovery. We were trying to power our way out with a minimal altitude loss. However, current training scenarios place focus and emphasis not on getting a secondary stall. See, right now what they're saying is do not get a secondary stall. I completely agree with this, by the way. Don't focus on how much altitude you're losing. Focus on don't get in a secondary stick shaker, a secondary RO stall alert, depending on the aircraft you're in, right? It's incredibly easy to do this, by the way. It's incredibly easy to do so, and what I mean by this is it's incredibly easy to get a secondary stick shaker. And let me explain to you how. See, usually you will have to do 3 stalls. Clean, one with the flaps extended, and then one with the gear down and the flaps extended. Usually we commonly refer to these as the clean stall, the departure stall, and the landing stall. Look, the secondary stall is most common on the first stall, clean, where an incredible amount of nose-up trim are commanded by the autopilot. The clean stall is usually completed with the auto throttle off, okay, or auto thrust in the case of 320, and the autopilot on, and the autopilot trim circuit will command a significant amount of nose-up trim to maintain altitude. Upon recovering, you are fighting to keep the nose down against an untrimmed elevator, number one, in a high thrust setting. And both combined lend themselves to basically a nose-up pitching moment that is fairly aggressive. So I guess what I'm saying is let's give you a solution here so that this doesn't happen to you. And before I do that, let me help you to understand something. For those of you new to aircraft with underwing mounted engines, when you have an underwing mounted engine, thrust application will result in a significant nose-up tendency. This is something known as thrust vectoring, if you will. And the thrust vector here is quite significant. So imagine if your elevator, okay, or your horizontal stabilizer rather, is trimmed for a nose-up condition with idle thrust. Imagine now a nose-up condition with lots of thrust. Okay, so let's first realize here that any power application on an aircraft, as I said, where the engines are mounted under the wing, will result in a nose-up tendency with that thrust application, in a nose-down tendency with power reduction. So if you reduce thrust, right, the contrary will happen and your nose here would actually come down. Crucial for those of you coming from maybe a CRJ, an ERJ, a Gulfstream, Challenger, a corporate jet, or a regional jet that has the engines mounted not under the wing, but back here on the tail, your thrust vectoring is not as significant. But here, with an underwing engine mount like such on a 7.3 or 320, or even maybe the later series Embraers, etc., you have a significant nose-up or nose-down pitching moment. Look, the objective should be to lower the nose down to about somewhere in the neighborhood of just under about 5 degrees of pitch attitude. Hold the nose there until speed is recovered and ensure you are using ample amounts of nose down trim. And of course, if you're in a 320 with normal law, you have auto trim, so you don't have to worry about that. Power application should be after the nose is brought down and should be slow and smooth. Look, do not aggressively push the power up, and additionally stay mindful of the spool up delay. Engines don't spool up like this. It takes a little bit of time. So once these engines kick that thrust in, you will need more nose down trim, more nose down pressure. Look, if you want more information in a very high detailed fashion, hit one of our type rating programs, whether 7.3, A320, RJ. Right there we talk about how to recover from the stall in depth in the briefing series of videos there. But what you want to know is this: if you're in a glider, can you stall a glider? Yes, it's an airfoil, and a glider has no thrust because there's no engine on it. So my point is, thrust is not what recovers you from a stall. Angle of attack is. Okay, let's talk steep turns here. Next air work here. Steep turns, look, this is